The moment the screen let out a beep and the court seal pressed down on the family tree, the pavilion at Lake Harriet seemed to fall half a beat silent. The smell of lemon in the lemonade jug, the guitar from the bandshell, the children's laughter, all were still there, but the air had changed color. I am Harper Holt. For 26 years, a sealed file decided who I am in this family and who was pushed to the margins. This noon, amid the wobbling potluck table, the unsealing order appeared, and in my hand was a valid DNA result, neat like a small key. I clearly heard a fork fall onto a paper plate, saw my aunt's eyes blink very quickly, and understood. Some secrets only need light, not shouting. I'm not telling this to shame anyone. I'm telling it to breathe. In Minneapolis, people call it Minnesota nice. Smile beautifully, push everything hard to say under the rug. Today, I lift that rug with the most ordinary voice I can. My real name, my origins, and the benefits that belong to no one but the truth. If you've ever stood at a family party with your heart feeling like it's out on the porch, I understand that feeling. And if you are hesitating between silence and speaking up, you are not alone. Welcome to Revenge and Resolve. Here, we open locks with patience and let the truth stand upright on its own. Thank you for spending time with me. Right at the moment the flag by the pavilion quivers and the lake wind passes through like a reminder, every footprint remains. If this story touches you, please press like, subscribe to the Revenge and Resolve channel, and comment Unsealed, so I know you want to hear the next part. Thank you for listening with your heart. We will keep moving forward, slowly but surely. That night, my apartment was as quiet as an upturned glass, with only the faint hum of the refrigerator. The phone went ding. The screen lit up. Minnesota DHS, Annual Kinship Review, Address, Linda's house. I blinked. I had moved out on my own 4 years ago, paid the electric bill with my own card, changed the address for everything to this apartment. Yet the records still listed my aunt's house. I opened old emails and dug up the Northstar notice. Still, Linda's address. I tapped to call. The person on the other end spoke politely, said it was probably a system error, contact the guardian on file to update. I went quiet for a beat. Who is the guardian on file, if not the person who has kept a ring of keys I've never even seen? I texted Linda Carver, keeping my tone gentle. Auntie, why does DHS still have your address? I've already moved out. The screen showed 3 dots, then words. Don't dig, you'll get hurt. Mom knows what's best. I set the phone down on the table and looked at the steaming cup of tea. Some sentences sound like an embrace, but leave a long imprint on the wrist. I remembered the time I requested a copy of the adoption file. The Department of Justice replied with a tidy email. Blocked by non-disclosure affidavit, signed 25 years ago. I read that line over and over like reading a note taped to a door that's always locked. Who signed it? And for what? If not to keep silent a voice that didn't belong to them. Midweek, I stopped by the Lutheran Church Hall for a gathering. The room was filled with the smell of weak coffee and baked goods. Linda stood by the orange juice jug, smiling the kind of Midwest nice everyone loves. Harper is very fragile, don't stir up the past. I stood a few steps away, hearing that sentence fly over the folding chairs and settle on my shoulders like a cold towel. Here, people are so polite that the hard things to say get pushed under the table. Today, I pull it up with the most ordinary voice I have. Everything is wrapped in the words, love. Everyone, please don't make it hard on her. While the keys to the important doors still lie in someone's pocket. At home, I turned on the kitchen light and laid out a blank sheet of paper. I wrote out each small task like spinning thread. Save the DHS email, Screenshot the Northstar notice. Print the Department of Justice reply. Note the date I moved out. List every time mail came to the wrong address. I called USPS to ask about mail forwarding. They guided me on how to track it. I set a reminder to call DHS back at a different hour, hoping to reach a different person. Each small task is a stitch, threading back together what had been unraveled by those gentle, don't, digs. Late at night, I stepped onto the balcony, summer wind touching my hand like a silent comfort. I thought about the red flags that had peeked out over the years and that I'd taken as passing breezes. Envelopes? For the good of the family, let me keep them. Phone calls I wasn't allowed to answer. Support payments that went through the church address. There was no thunderclap, only a string of tiny dings, persistent reminders to open my eyes. I promised myself, this time I won't close my eyes and pretend not to see. I sent one last message before sleeping. To myself in the Notes app, the truth doesn't hurt me. What keeps the truth does. Then I wrote one more line, like lighting a small lamp. Tomorrow call Hennepin Court to ask about the procedure to unseal the file. Also ask, who signed the affidavit 25 years ago? I turned off the light. In the quiet darkness of the apartment, I could clearly hear that my heart had changed its beat. Less fear, a little more calm. In a place where people teach each other to smile beautifully, I choose to learn one more thing. Keep smiling, but keep my hand gripping the thread, pulling it all the way to the end. Maya Levin's office was bright like a new morning, with a neat wooden desk and a window looking out over a strip of still green maples. Maya poured me a glass of water, her gaze direct yet warm. Harper, to unseal the file, we have to give the court a sufficient reason, good cause. We'll have 2 prongs. AABB standard DNA testing and the fraudulent context around the benefits. I'll file in Hennepin County Family Court. The way she spoke made the hard-to-swallow suddenly go down easier. No promises of miracles, just lining up bricks. I nodded. In my head, the cicadas at Lake Harriet receded, making room for the sound of a machine starting up in the right sequence. The days that followed moved to their own rhythm, clear and calm. In Dr. Priya Shah's lab, I sat on a vinyl-covered chair while the glove technician carefully swabbed the inside of my cheek. A small card with my name, the collection time, the collector's signature, and mine was clipped together and placed into a sealed pouch. On the pouch were a barcode and a chain of custody stamp, like a red thread running through every hand. Dr. Shah spoke softly. This protocol helps the results stand up in court. You just need to breathe steadily. I smiled, catching a whiff of alcohol, and thought, sometimes courage is simply sitting still so others can do their jobs right. At the same time, Beth, my cousin, stopped by Linda's house to help clear the paper cabinet. In the middle drawer was an old ledger with a recent DHS recert tucked inside. The representative section signed by Linda on my behalf. Beth sent me a photo. Just enough of the text and dates, nothing more. I looked at the screen, my heart beating slow and deep. Some lines of ink need no commentary. In the afternoon, I went to the home of Owen Rains, a retired social worker who used to visit our house back then. He took a yellowed note from a wooden box. Placement with her is temporary, pending finalization of adoption. His handwriting was even and clear, like an old footpath that still leads back to the right yard. Maya gathered everything into a plastic folder, labeling each item: AABB DNA, ledger, recert, Owen's case note, and a brief email line to Greta Larson at the Office of Inspector General. A short tip. Indications that benefits continued after I turned 18. No accusations, only timelines and documents. I sat across from her. watching Maya run down the list. When the court asks why we need to unseal, we present the full picture. Origins concealed, benefits misused, and an adult who wants to know the truth about herself. She looked up. Your part is to tell it. The rest let the papers and cameras tell. The sounds of the next days were like a minimalist score. Thunk, the filed stamp on the petition. Whir, the scanner running across each page. Ping, the email confirming the evidence submission schedule. I quietly looked at the green stamp snug in the corner of the paper, feeling like the first time you learn to swim and touch the pool's bottom. Not a place to stand long, but a place to brace. That night, I wrote in my notebook, I thought I didn't dare. Turns out enough pain becomes enough grit. The line sat neatly, like a reminder saved just for my tomorrow self. On the day Maya filed with Hennepin County Family Court, we waited in the hallway. Cream-colored walls, oak benches, an electronic board blinking case numbers. Maya came out and handed me the receipt. Petition is docketed. The court will consider it on an expedited basis under state law. I nodded. My fingers pinching the edge of the paper felt warm. Walking down the steps, the Minneapolis breeze carried the smell of freshly cut grass. I thought of the people who have picked locks with patience, and of myself, learning that rhythm too. The girl who once believed politeness was the only way to exist. Now I'm learning a new beat. Keep the politeness, but hold the file steady in my hand. That night, I fell asleep late. My mind on the root of the papers, lab, law office, court, and maybe the day a judge's pen signs the unseal order. If that order comes, I won't cry loudly. I'll call Beth, email thanks to Dr. Shah, text Owen I got it, and write to myself, the journey of knowing who I am begins with the word dare. And in the apartment's quiet, I heard my heart strike a new beat. Steady, bright, and patient, like the scanner that keeps drawing across each page of the truth. The rainy afternoon cafe was like a fogged glass box, windows streaked with water, the warm smell of espresso curling with the smell of wet coats, the spoon gently clinking against the rim of a cup. I handed over my card. The reader gave a dry beep and stopped. The manager looked at the screen, hesitated for a second as if choosing her words. I'm sorry. Your card was declined. The system shows a newly opened medical debt. The verification address is Ms. Linda's house. I blinked. Everything suddenly shrank. The corner of the table sticky with sugar, the napkin I was wringing, the undissolved grains of sugar on the cup's rim. I moved out on my own 4 years ago, changed my address everywhere. Yet somewhere, a door is still using my name to open. My hand trembled as I pressed call. The other end picked up on the second ring, a cold, even voice. If you stop digging, Mom will take care of the paperwork. I stood up, slipped past the waiting customers, ducked into the wash-up nook to hear more clearly. Take care of the paperwork, as if the truth were a stack of documents to be folded up neatly. Stop digging, as if my self-respect were the shovel dirtying someone's lawn. I tried to keep my voice steady. Auntie, this is my name. I need to understand what is happening. The other side paused a beat, then a thin thread-like sigh. Doing this only hurts everyone. I hung up. The sentence lingered in my ear. The condition for being loved is to not know the truth. I leaned my back against the brick wall, listening to the rain tap slowly on the metal roof. Suddenly I felt small again, like the 16-year-old version of myself standing behind the church hall, holding a paper plate and asking if I would ever be called by my real name. I inhaled as I'd practiced since working with Maya. Breathe in 4 counts, hold 2, breathe out 6. When I stepped back to the counter, the manager had set the bill aside, her voice gentle. It's okay, you can use cash, or we can hold your coffee for you to pick up tomorrow. I smiled my thanks, just as the door swung open and Beth ran in through the rain. One look, and Beth understood. She didn't barrage me with questions. She just wrapped her arms around me, the warmth of her sweater soaking into my back like someone pressing a heat pack onto a cramp. I'm on your side. To the end, she said simply, then paid with her own card as if this were nothing to make a fuss about. We sat down, watching the rain string into long threads outside the window. I told her, the DHS email listing Linda's address, Northstar unchanged, the non-disclosure affidavit blocking the file, and now a newly opened medical debt. Beth opened a notebook and wrote each line neatly. Credit freeze. Call the clinic to verify medical records. Who signed? Tell Maya. Attach the declined bill. Save Linda's voicemail. Each line was like a small stake fixing the ground that was slipping under my feet. The rain thrummed softly like a wordless song. I watched the coffee foam fade and suddenly understood the strange tether. People say, love, to ask me to be quiet, say I'm fragile in order to keep the keys to my life. But if affection is conditioned on don't ask, it's no longer a place to lean. It's a rope pulling me back into someone else's shadow. I nodded slowly and said to Beth as if to myself, I won't bargain anymore. We left while the rain was still spitting. On the sidewalk, she held the umbrella over me, her other hand carrying the packet of papers wrapped in nylon. I texted Maya. Urgent. Card declined. System shows a medical debt opened at Linda's address. I'm attaching images. The phone buzzed back almost instantly. Received. I'll work with the insurer and the court. You keep all documents. I paused a moment at a puddle in the road and saw my face in it. Tired but no longer shaking. In this city, people like to call it Minnesota nice. I will still be polite. Hello, thank you, excuse me. But in my hand will be the file, the timestamps, and a straight line forward. And if love demands that I close my eyes, I will learn to love myself first. By opening my eyes, standing upright, and moving on. The rainy afternoon cafe was like a fogged glass box, windows streaked with water, the warm smell of espresso curling with the smell of wet coats, the spoon gently clinking against the rim of a cup. I handed over my card. The reader gave a dry beep and stopped. The manager looked at the screen, hesitated for a second as if choosing her words. I'm sorry. Your card was declined. The system shows a newly opened medical debt. The verification address is Ms. Linda's house. I blinked. Everything suddenly shrank. The corner of the table sticky with sugar, the napkin I was wringing, the undissolved grains of sugar on the cup's rim. I moved out on my own 4 years ago, changed my address everywhere. Yet somewhere, a door is still using my name to open. My hand trembled as I pressed call. The other end picked up on the second ring, a cold, even voice. If you stop digging, Mom will take care of the paperwork. I stood up, slipped past the waiting customers, ducked into the wash-up nook to hear more clearly. Take care of the paperwork, as if the truth were a stack of documents to be folded up neatly. Stop digging. As if my self-respect were the shovel dirtying someone's lawn. I tried to keep my voice steady. Auntie, this is my name. I need to understand what is happening. The other side paused a beat, then a thin thread-like sigh. Doing this only hurts everyone. I hung up. The sentence lingered in my ear. The condition for being loved is to not know the truth. I leaned my back against the brick wall, listening to the rain tap slowly on the metal roof. Suddenly I felt small again, like the 16-year-old version of myself standing behind the church hall, holding a paper plate and asking if I would ever be called by my real name. I inhaled as I'd practiced since working with Maya. Breathe in 4 counts, hold 2, breathe out 6. When I stepped back to the counter, the manager had set the bill aside, her voice gentle. It's okay. You can use cash, or we can hold your coffee for you to pick up tomorrow. I smiled my thanks, just as the door swung open and Beth ran in through the rain. One look, and Beth understood. She didn't barrage me with questions. She just wrapped her arms around me, the warmth of her sweater soaking into my back like someone pressing a heat pack onto a cramp. I'm on your side. To the end, she said simply, then paid with her own card as if this were nothing to make a fuss about. We sat down, watching the rain string into long threads outside the window. I told her, the DHS email listing Linda's address, Northstar unchanged, the non-disclosure affidavit blocking the file, and now a newly opened medical debt. Beth opened a notebook and wrote each line neatly. Credit freeze. Call the clinic to verify medical records. Who signed? Tell Maya. Attach the declined bill. Save Linda's voicemail. Each line was like a small stake fixing the ground that was slipping under my feet. The rain thrummed softly like a wordless song. I watched the coffee foam fade and suddenly understood the strange tether. People say, love, to ask me to be quiet, say I'm fragile in order to keep the keys to my life. But if affection is conditioned on don't ask, it's no longer a place to lean. It's a rope pulling me back into someone else's shadow. I nodded slowly and said to Beth, as if to myself, I won't bargain anymore. We left while the rain was still spitting. On the sidewalk, she held the umbrella over me, her other hand carrying the packet of papers wrapped in nylon. I texted Maya, urgent, card declined, system shows a medical debt opened at Linda's address. I'm attaching images. The phone buzzed back almost instantly. Received. I'll work with the insurer and the court. You keep all documents. I paused a moment at a puddle in the road and saw my face in it. Tired, but no longer shaking. In this city, people like to call it Minnesota nice. I will still be polite. Hello? Thank you? Excuse me. But in my hand will be the file, the timestamps, and a straight line forward. And if love demands that I close my eyes, I will learn to love myself first, by opening my eyes, standing upright, and moving on. In the morning, I run a loop around the chain of lakes, my feet hitting an even rhythm on the dew-wet path. Demacaska opens like a wide mirror. Ducklings line up behind their mother, the clack of oars somewhere nearby. I cross Lake of the Isles and loop back toward Harriet. The wind skimming past my ears cool, the smell of wet grass and pine resin blending together. At a small slope near the shore, I stop to stretch, look at the rippling water under the early sun and tell myself, today I will read through the entire unsealed file. At noon, I spread the papers on the table, opening each plastic sleeve like opening a box of memories. On the cover sheet is a softly slanted line, Megan Holt, birth mother. Inside is a folded letter, the paper already yellowed. I open it slowly, as if afraid of tearing the sound of the past. If one day you read these lines, I chose safety for you. My mother's handwriting isn't rounded. It has hard angles, as if the writer had hesitated and still went on. I place my hand on the edge of the paper, feeling like touching a shoulder both strange and familiar. Linda is my mother's sister. A connection so simple it's hard to believe, yet it was placed at the bottom of a drawer for more than 20 years. I text Beth a photo of the file cover, then open Facebook to look up the names that skimmed across the letter. An old group of my mother's friends, a student amateur band, blurry photos from decades ago. I send a few polite messages. No expectations, but my heart feels like a door cracked open. In the afternoon, one person replies, Megan played guitar at the first Ave open mic back then. She laughed a lot. The message is short, yet I have to sit still for a while. I've passed First Avenue many times. The black stars painted on the wall, the metal doors glossy with night, never knowing that place once held my mother's laughter. On the weekend, I drive up to Duluth. I-35 runs close along the cold blue surface of Lake Superior, waves striking the white rocks into clumps of foam. The sky is clear, and the wind sharp as glass. I stop by a distant aunt's house. She keeps an old shoebox of photos, the musty smell of long-kept paper. She says, Megan loved guitar from a young age. She plastered stickers all over her guitar case, and every time she sang at First Ave, she'd come home bragging about the applause. She smiles and then sighs, adding a few fragments I fill in with my imagination. A girl with loose hair, standing under yellow lights, fingers plucking strings, mouth singing lines no one recorded. I ask to photograph a few pictures. Say thank you. On the way back, I turn the radio off, let wind flow through the cracked window, and let myself hear an ordinary heartbeat. Back in Minneapolis, I stop by Minnehaha Falls. The waterfall pours into a white band, cool mist rising. I sit on the stone ledge, take out my mother's letter, and read it once more. The line, "I chose safety for you," no longer sounds like an excuse. It feels like a rope pulling a boat to shore in a stormy night. There may have been clumsy choices, there may have been missteps, but amid it all, there was still the intention to keep me intact. I photograph the letter, slip it into a plastic sleeve, then write one line in my notebook. Secrets don't heal. Truth does. In the days after, I rearrange my life like setting up a new shelf. In the morning, I run one more loop around the lake. At noon, I stop by a familiar cafe to revisit a few songs my mother used to like. In the evening, I call that old friend to ask more about the songs my mother would play. I stick a photo of my mother smiling on the refrigerator, next to the work schedule and the grocery list. Not to worship, but to remember where I come from. When I pass First Ave on a windy evening, I stop for a few minutes to look at the wall of stars and think, maybe one day I'll hold a guitar and stand in there, singing a new song. Not to call the past back, but to answer it. I get home at nightfall, the city lit up. I cook a simple pot of soup, put on soft acoustic music. On the kitchen table, the file cover sits neat like a book whose important chapter has been finished. I lay my hand on it, no longer trembling. Finding identity, it turns out I don't have to look far. It's in the sound of my breath when running around the lake, in the cold droplets of the falls, in my mother's slanted signature, and in my own decision to keep living, light but steady, with the truth placed on the very top shelf. Noon at Lake Harriet Park, the lake breeze blew cool under the pavilion roof, the potluck table trembling lightly with people passing by, a pot of tater-tot hot dish still steaming, deviled eggs sprinkled with paprika next to a glistening Jell-O tray, a lemonade pitcher beaded with condensation as if just lifted from the freezer. Linda wore boat shoes, a pale blue floral dress, a rounded Midwest nice smile. Beth stood beside me, her hand gently tightening on my sleeve cuff. Her eyes saying enough in place of words. Linda raised her glass, her voice soft as cream. Harper's success is thanks to her mother. Scattered applause. I heard my heart beat steadily like oars stirring the water. Beth tilted her head. A very small nod. Do it. I stepped up to the mic, took a deep breath. The warm smell of grass and the scent of lemon from the pitcher blending together. Thank you, everyone, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Before we watch the slides, I have 2 documents to announce. I set 2 folders on the table, the thud sounding in the pavilion like a knock on a door. The first, a court order from Hennepin, order to unseal, with the green seal plain as day. The second, an AABB standard DNA result signed by Dr. Priya Shah. I held silent for a beat long enough for everyone to see the words at the top of the page, then spoke slowly. The results confirm I am the child of Megan Holt, not the biological child of Linda. A rustle swept beneath the pavilion. Forks touched paper plates with a soft sound that cut the air. The stars and stripes flag outside flicked. Linda sprang up, her chair screeching, "You're a traitor! I raised you!" I turned back and saw her eyes flash like a knife hidden under a napkin. I kept my back straight, choosing each word like choosing stones to place across a stream. You received benefits for years after I had moved out on my own. You signed to block the adoption file so I could not touch my own name. That is not love. Beth pressed the projector. The screen lit up. Photos of the DHS ledger, the numbers redacted but the dates don't lie. Next was the old non-disclosure affidavit signed more than 20 years ago. No one told anyone to. People leaned toward the screen on their own, as if to read more closely the truth that had been right there. From the edge of the crowd, a plainclothes investigator came forward and handed a sealed envelope to Linda and then left. No one made a statement. She spoke softly, not raising her voice, but each word landed like boundary stakes driven in a straight line. Linda staggered. Her chair crashed backward with a bang that hushed the nearby children. An older man set down his glass, his voice hoarse but clear. "We thought you were protecting the child. Turns out you were protecting the checks." The sentence dropped its final clack into the silence that had just opened, and no one added a word. I did not feel triumphant. I only felt as if I had set a heavy suitcase down on wooden boards, my shoulders loosening a notch. I looked at Beth. She nodded as if to say, "It's okay now." In another corner, a cousin quietly pulled up a chair for me and placed in my hand a glass of lemonade with fresh ice. I took the mic again, my voice steady like when I read my birth mother's letter aloud in the kitchen last night. "I didn't come today to accuse anyone. I came to give the name back to the truth and to return my breath to the right chest. I am grateful to the people who stood beside me: Beth, Maya, Dr. Shaw, Greta, and to those in the family who still want to listen." I closed the file, not with a slam, just set it down lightly like closing a book at the proper bookmark. At the edge of the pavilion, the lake breeze threaded through the rows of flags, and the guitar from the bandshell rose again, a familiar tune sounding brand new. In my mind, there flashed the conclusion I have learned with my whole self over these months. Even Midwest nice runs out of words sometimes. The truth does not. It stays, quiet but enduring, like the surface of Lake Harriet when the wind stops, flat for a long enough moment that everyone can see themselves in it. I handed back the mic, walked toward my own abuela, meaning the photo of Megan in my wallet, and whispered, "I've unlocked it, Mom." Then I sat down, ate a bite of hot dish gone cold, felt the rich saltiness dissolve slowly on my tongue, and knew the tremor in my hands had drifted away, like a boat finally reaching a peaceful shore. The administrative office of the OIG was cold bright like a fresh sheet of paper. Greta spread a spreadsheet before us. Neatly aligned number cells, 5 columns for 5 years of benefits flowing to the wrong address, a column for interest calculated monthly, and a civil penalty line at the bottom like an incontestable period. She explained slowly, without addition, "This is the overpaid amount. This is the interest. This is the statutory penalty. We propose a scheduled repayment plan. If not complied with, the state will offset directly." The pen skimmed over paper with a soft rasp. Linda sat opposite, hands clasped, eyes avoiding the numbers. Maya set before her a concise, large print, easy-to-read agreement, a commitment to repay, and an acknowledging debt in the form of a judgment. A simple way of saying that if she missed the schedule, the judgment would automatically take effect, so the state could enforce the amount due. In the room, quiet as a library, Linda signed. The ink dried quickly, leaving a bold black stroke that looked ordinary like any signature. But to me, it was the money door that had weighed on my name finally closing. In parallel, Maya represented me in a small civil matter, repairing my reputation for the insinuations that I was sponging while not a child, and the attorney's fees I had paid with each overtime shift. We didn't ask for much, Maya said. Healing also needs boundaries. The mediation took place in a small conference room that smelled of cold coffee. On the table, besides the fee agreement, was a pre-typed apology letter. Linda read and signed it, acknowledging that her statements harmed me and committing not to interfere with my personal records anymore. Not retaining originals, not obstructing requests for copies, not using my name to receive documents. I looked at that paper and felt my throat suddenly lighten. It turns out some apologies don't need a raised voice, only to be placed in the right spot. On another morning, we returned to family court for a brief status hearing. Judge Whitaker reviewed the file, his voice even and warm like the oak of the courtroom. The unsealing order remains in effect. Harper is entitled to obtain a copy of the original birth certificate. He paused for a beat, looked around, then added like an underline. However, no one has the exclusive right to tell Megan's story. Everyone has their own memories, and Harper has personal rights and the right to keep her own original documents. I nodded, thanked him. In that moment, I understood why Maya always reminded me that calm is strength. Justice here doesn't speak loudly. It stands upright, points to each line of text, and lets them light up on their own. Leaving the courthouse, Minneapolis was crisp dry, sunlight pouring slantwise onto the stone steps. Maya pressed a thin envelope into my hand. The first copy of the birth record. Keep it safe. I slid it into a clear plastic sleeve, hearing the plastic rub the paper like an old coat finding the right hanger. The OIG notice arrived in the mailbox that same afternoon, a monthly repayment schedule, a contact line in case of trouble, phrases impersonal yet very human in the way they returned boundaries to my life. I texted Beth, penalty and repayment finished. Court affirmed the right to obtain copies. Celebrate tonight with simple soup? She replied with a pot and a heart icon. That night, I laid everything out on the kitchen table: the apology letter, the repayment agreement, the investigation notice, the court minutes, and the original birth certificate. None of them glittered. They simply sat straight like paving bricks. I touched the edge of the paper, listened to the city breathe outside the window, and said quietly to myself, clear, without anger, I am not asking to put you in prison. I am asking to return my name, my papers, and the right to tell my own story. In the warm-lit kitchen, that sentence stood still for a moment, then dissolved into the cinnamon scent from the teapot like a promise meant to keep. Minneapolis slips into late summer as gently as a long sigh, and I start drawing again. On quiet nights, I spread paper on the kitchen table, brew a cup of cinnamon tea, turn on a small warm lamp, and sketch the first lines for an illustration series called Northstar, the guiding star for someone lost in the dark. Each piece is a small leg of the recognition journey. A deep blue lake with a single point of light at the water's edge, a thin, snowy path with the footprints of one person and then another. The black star wall by First Ave with one star where I quietly write Megan, very small, along the edge. A kitchen with a clipped file sitting neatly beside a vase of wild daisies. I choose a simple palette, lake blue, honey yellow, a little black ink. Once printed, I frame them myself, label them, note the year, and my signature. On Northeast Art Crawl Day, I hang them on a run of brick wall in a corner of a small gallery room, fairy lights strung across, the smell of wood and fresh paint blending into an acoustic soundtrack. Passers-by stop before the piece Unseal, an envelope slightly opened with a spray of light. One young woman whispers, "Thank you," and snaps a photo. A middle-aged man says, "My family also has an adopted child. They'll like this set." I smile, step back a little to leave space for them to find themselves in the paintings. Midway through, my phone vibrates. An email from the Minneapolis Community Fund. Adult Adoptee Scholarship. Congratulations, Harper. I read each word slowly, feeling my chest lighten as if another window had opened. It's a small scholarship, enough for a weekend nonfiction writing course and some new colors for Northstar. I text Beth a screenshot. A minute later, she sends back a confetti icon and the line, "Let's go out tonight." We meet at a spot along Nicollet Mall, sit at an outdoor table, streetlights casting long bands of light, a busker on the corner blowing harmonica like a murmured story. I order pan-seared walleye, squeeze lemon over it, butter melting into a glossy streak. Beth opens a bottle of Topo Chico, bubbles fizzing. We eat slowly, telling the day we've just lived like telling a rainstorm that has just passed. No longer wetting our clothes, only the clean smell of earth remaining. You did the thing everyone fears. Told the truth to the people you love, Beth says, setting down her knife and fork to look straight at me. I answer, light but firm. You stood next to me. That's enough. We laugh, not because of winning or losing, but because in the end this meal holds only the sweetness of the fish and the cool breeze threading through the rows of trees. I look down Nicollet, the light rail gliding softly along the tracks, the skyway panes reflecting the late blue sky. The city suddenly shrinks to the size of the embrace of two sisters, just enough to carry home. At night, I hang one more Northstar piece on the living room wall, the one with a small line of text under the frame. Live well is the best revenge. Living well isn't to make someone feel regret, but so that my heart won't have to second-guess itself ever again. I close the laptop, wash the dishes, turn off most of the lights, leaving the glow of the fairy light strand reflecting on the frames. Tomorrow I will continue to draw, continue to study, continue to run a lap around the lake before the sun rises. Peace doesn't arrive all at once. It's arranged from small, orderly things. Giving my name back to myself, safeguarding documents, eating a good meal with the one who stands on my side. And when I lie down, I hear the city breathing steadily outside the window frame. Hear some small star inside me shining in the right place. Sunset dyes the Stone Arch Bridge, the color of honey. The Mississippi River flows softly like a wide ribbon of silk. Wind slips along the bridge rail, bringing the smell of cold water and stone dust, the sound of bicycle pedals steady as a heartbeat. I lean against the railing, watch the first specks of light switch on along the East Bank shore, and remind myself, in Minneapolis, any ice will eventually melt. Any file will eventually be unsealed, and any heart will eventually heal, when the truth is called by its right name. I no longer feel angry, only a very thin layer of warmth remains, like the last light of day lying still on the river. Beth texts, "Get home safe." I reply with a photo of the bridge and a short line, "I'm okay." I know I have passed the hardest stretch. From when the first door clicked open, to when I learned to walk slowly, keep my back straight, and let the paperwork speak for me. Tonight I will go home to hang another Northstar piece, brew a cup of cinnamon tea, and write a few lines to Mother Megan in the notebook. I am moving forward, gently but surely. Thank you for staying with me to this moment, having listened, believed, and given a quiet corner of your day to walk slowly with me through the bends. If this story touches you, please press like, subscribe to the Revenge and Resolve channel, and leave the number 1 in the comments if you want me to keep telling the journey to find Megan's paternal family, the names still missing from the family tree, the laughs not yet recorded, the belated hugs that can still be warm. The end credits indie music hums very softly behind me. The river wind blows across the bridge. I take my hands off the railing and keep walking, calm, looking straight ahead, and calling the truth by the most ordinary voice.